Welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Aaron, welcome to the Ranchonomics podcast. Super glad to have you with us. For those of you joining us, I have Aaron Reese here today from Provident Meat Company in Fillmore, Utah. Aaron and I are old neighbors back. How long has it been since we lived near each other? It was at least 10 years. Was it 15 years now?
Yeah, 15 or pushing 18. I don't know, for a long time.
Very good. Aaron Reese, I used to cowboy all over the country and decided a few years ago to build a meat processing plant, which is one of the most fascinating undertakings I think I've seen from this distance. And I asked him to come here today to talk a little about the processing business, mostly so that ranchers who work with processors but maybe aren't intimately familiar with the business could get a little better understanding. So, Aaron, thank you very much for coming today.
Yeah, good to visit.
Let's talk a little about what you do. Tell us a little about your plant, and then we'll get into it from there.
Okay, so the fall of 20, when we went through COVID, that spring, we'd bought a herd of cows, ended up giving those away, worked through the summer for a local processor, started doing game that fall, and that's grown into a new facility now. We've been in it over a year. We're USDA inspected. We do 95%-ish of beef for customers. A lot of that's retail, going to other people. So the USDA inspection's a big part of our business. And then we'll also do wild game in the fall.
And so you cut meat for customers that then resell it, or do you cut it and resell it yourself?
Yes, some of both. We still have our own cattle. The difference is we don't give them away anymore. I make money on every cow I kill because I know what my costs are and I know where it's going. Yeah, so that's what started this whole deal. You know as well as I do, you were in with us on some of those cattle, and it was not a fun experience, and nobody likes giving cows away. So this is the way I control my costs on the cows. Little did we know, a lot of money later, we'd have a processing plant and be in the meat cutting
$2 million
business.
Later, you'd be in the meat business, huh?
Yeah, well, we're only $1 million in so far, but we're
good.
still spending it every day.
Yeah, I love it. What he's referencing there is we had bought a bunch of open cows in the fall of, was it the fall of 19, right? And got them pregnant.
Yes.
And then right when we took them to sale as bred fall cows was literally March or April 2020, when sale barns were shut down. You couldn't go in. Prices got insane. There was a lot of uncertainty there for a bit.
So we had sold a lot of those cows as bred cows, making anywhere from $200 to $400 a head on them. All of a sudden we were stuck with, 150 head of cows. We were droughted out. We didn't have anywhere to go with them. We just perfect timing for a terrible market.
Yeah, it was good luck. So, Aaron, tell me, as you've gotten into this business more and more, and especially if you work with ranchers and people that are trying to butcher beef either for their own consumption or to sell to others, what are the hardest parts? What are the pain points? What do we as cattle raisers need to know about the processing business in order to sort of work well with you and ultimately produce a good result for our customers?
The biggest challenge I see is people are selling beef and they are misrepresenting the beef. They don't know what a finished beef is. They sell a choice beef, for example, and they have no idea what a choice beef is. So they're selling an open cow off of grass that's select at best. And so knowing the grades and looking at a cow and knowing when it's finished is a big deal. And feed guys understand that, ranchers not so much.
And it is often hard to actually finish a beef. And by finish it, you're talking about has enough fat, has enough development. Basically, it's mature enough that it is sort of converted from just a big animal to an animal that is truly finished.
Yes, most people are used to eating like a choice beef. If they buy a ribeye, they want it to be choice. They don't want select. And so that's the goal. And there's different markets, but you got to represent your beef for what it actually is. And that's the big deal, because the customer comes back on me and said, hey, I bought a really good beef and you sent me a crappy beef. You stole my good beef. I cut the cow and I send you the same cow you brought me every time. That's a big deal. But if you bring me a crappy cow, you're going to get a crappy beef. And then the customer you sold it to is pissed at me because I stole their good beef. I've had a manor tell me, just be ready to be a meat thief. That's a common butcher deal. They stole my good cow and give me an old crappy cow.
Yeah. What else? What can we do to be a good customer when we take beef to the processor?
If you're selling it to a person, I need to know who that person is, and they need to know that their beef is at my plant. So that's a big deal. I spend a lot of time on the phone chasing down a ghost customer that bought a beef and he didn't know it was here. We've tried to streamline our process. You can go on our website, you can book a beef, you can schedule that beef, you can fill out the cut sheet. We've tried to take out a lot of those hurdles. So I'm not on the phone all day, but I spend a lot of time, too much time, hunting down customers to get a cut sheet or telling them to come get their beef because they didn't know it was here. So just communication with your customers.
Great. How do we do as far as when you call the customers or have them fill out a cut sheet? How well versed are we in all of that as far as the people you deal with and that sort of thing?
Very poor.
So what do we need to know?
Most ranchers know less about a beef than a soccer mom in a minivan that has 6 kids. Because she's bought meat in the store and the rancher's never bought meat in a store. He just gets it out of his deep freeze and it's whatever his wife told the guy to cut. I've had ranchers, for example, say, I don't want a filet mignon, but they wonder where their tenderloin's at. Well, everybody in the world that's been to a restaurant knows what a filet mignon is, but not an old cowboy that's run cows for 50 years. We don't know enough. I was guilty the same as everybody else when we started this deal. I knew very little about the cuts, the grades, anything, and it's been a crash course in the meat business for sure.
Good. Give me some samples. We're recording this in August of 2024. It's summertime. For the last couple months, what's been your focus? How do you prioritize things?
As far as cutting the beef?
As far as what cuts sort of work the best for a lot of people?
Yeah, so in the summer, majority of people are grilling or smoking or whatever they're doing. They're cooking outside.
Outside.
We cut a lot more steaks. We cut a lot more, for example, we cut the ribs really thin called Korean style. Those go on the grill good. But in the winter, we do a lot more crock pot style, pot roast to chuck roast to whatever. Seasonality of meat is a big deal. People don't realize that nobody wants a crock pot in the house when it's 100 degrees outside. And so that's pellet grills, smokers, things like that are a big deal. In the summer, we do a lot of briskets, ribs, steaks, roasts, whatever, just more summertime type cuts. Hamburger patties are a big deal right now. You cut the beef kind of towards the season a little bit.
Yeah. And I imagine, especially if people are selling smaller quantities, like if they're selling quarters or less, right? That grilling package is really what we're after.
Yeah. So that's another pinch point, I guess, or problem. So if somebody sells a beef and they sell 4 quarters, well, all 4 of those people send me a cut sheet and they all 4 want everything that's on a beef.
They want the whole thing.
You can't have T-bones, ribeyes, and all the cuts on a beef if you're only getting a quarter of a beef. I mean, we can cut a half a beef and split it back into corners, and then it's equal amounts, but it's always a pain, and somebody's always pissed about they didn't get whatever. Most of the things you see online selling a quarter of an eighth or a beef is a set weight amount, say 150 pounds, for example, is a quarter of beef or whatever they predetermine. And a lot of that's probably a box meat or a pre-selected box of meat that it's not going to include all the cuts that you want on a half a beef.
It's just a list of specific cuts, and that's what we call a quarter.
It's X amount of steaks, X amount of roasts, X amount of burgers.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's kind of it's an easier way to do it than actually cut the beef up. And when we cut a whole beef up, it all goes back to you.
Bones and all.
Yeah. And we try to educate people. We're throwing away roughly $200 a head, I would say, in offal and blood and, all the things that the big packers can utilize. And we're trying to utilize that the best we can as well. Educate people on how to use that. For example, marrow bones is a big thing right now. People want marrow bones, and I'm happy to cut them up and send them home versus throwing them away and paying to haul them to the dump.
Yeah. The other part, I guess, if we're doing a custom direct type deal, again, just being thoughtful, I think about if we've sold a quarters or eighths, right? We now, instead of dealing with one customer per head, or even one customer per load, which you might be dealing with in a commercial operation. Now you're dealing with 8 customers per head. Each one of those requires a cut sheet, requires a payment, requires pickup, all that, right?
So to be honest with you, I just tell people, I said, listen, we'll split them into quarters and we charge them a little bit more to split it back into quarters. But we just say, if you want to split further than that, go ahead and do whatever you want. We'll process it. You can split it 10 ways. I don't care.
Yeah.
If 4 families come in and buy beef, a lot of the time they'll buy the beef, they'll take it back and they'll split it up. I'm perfect with that because I don't have to mess with it.
Yeah.
And then it can be their fight. It's not my problem that I messed up their quarter and they didn't get a ribeye and the other guy did or whatever.
Have you taken a sell-by marketing course, but still found yourself unsure of what to do when the auctioneer started talking fast and the gavel started banging? The cattle are going in and out. Suddenly you don't even know what lot you're bidding on. It's hard to evaluate the cattle, run the math, while still keeping one ear on the bid price. The worst part is it's probably been a month and you still haven't taken any decisive action. We've been there, and you want to know what makes it better? Practice. But not just any practice, realistic pressured practice. This is exactly why Ranching.fyi is hosting their first strategic ranch simulation, October 28th to 30th in Gillette, Wyoming. The sim program is designed to help you start winning under pressure and to think on your feet and adapt to changing circumstances without letting time slip away. Don't miss out. Sign up today and we will see you in Gillette, Wyoming on October 28th to the 30th. Visit www.ranching.fyi before the gavel taps. I've got a kill date tomorrow, but my kid's got a tummy ache, so I'm going to be 2 hours late. It's July and August. Is that going to work?
Not ideal, but our kill date is on Monday because of our state inspector. I spend Sunday afternoon. I get all the cattle here. I have them here. They're settled. They're not pissed. They spend the night here, and then we start early Monday morning and we start killing. So when we start killing, we want to stay working and get done because we've got 8 hours with an inspector and we've got to be done in those 8 hours. Very seldom do I let people bring cattle and we're killing unless, for example, yesterday we had an emergency kill. He got here at 1 o'clock. We run it right in the chute, get it in, and 30 minutes is in the cooler and out of his feed yard. So there's a rare exception, but I try to have them all here the day before and everything done and situated so we don't have a wreck while we're trying to kill.
Good. In the summer, I assume temperature is a big deal, especially where you live. Pretty thoughtful about what we're doing at what time of day, right?
It's hot and we start early and we try to get down as quick as possible and get them in the cooler.
And how about on the other end? When you're done, you call me and tell me my meat's ready to pick up. What do I need to do? You'll happily store it for a month or two, right?
Yeah, get here tomorrow is the best deal. I mean, if I cut a beef today and it goes in the freezer, it's frozen, ready to go in the morning. And if you come tomorrow, that's great. But we've kind of clamped down on it a little bit. I think we got 5 business days on our invoices, but sooner the better. I'll cut beef for a week and my freezer's completely full. And I can't start cutting beef again next week until that meat's gone. So we've got say a 10 or 15 head capacity in our freezer plus our other stuff. And everybody's always out of freezer space. It's killing beef. That's just part of the business.
Constant. Let's go back to the different ways we can cut a beef. How much flexibility is there? So I, for a long time, thought, there's, more or less one way to cut a beef with a few variants. Like, how much variety can they be? So when you talk about like a summer-oriented grilling beef cut compared to maybe a winter one, how much difference is there really?
The real difference is not so much summer and winter. It's more of a retail versus a custom cut. Okay. So for the last 50 years, most beef have been cut fairly close to the same. Every guy's a little bit different, but it's about the same. So in the last 8 to 10 years, since YouTube, since all these different social media deals, everybody's got different cuts. They're trying to, world famous chefs are cooking a flat iron, for example, or a Denver steak or whatever, something that most ranchers didn't even know was a thing. I have customers saying, hey, you've got all these different cuts nobody else has. I'm like, everybody else has the same cut. You're just not getting it. And we are definitely slower than most guys. We cut 3 beef today. That was a big day for us. And that's way too slow for most people. We bone out the chuck, for example. You get some flat irons out of that. You get some Denver steaks. You get some boneless chuck steaks, which are 1 knife away from a ribeye. That's a big deal. That's a poor man's ribeye. That type of stuff adds value to that carcass instead of a great big chuck roast that has all the bones in. Some people like that. A lot of people do not. The better the beef, the more time I'm going to spend on it and the more cuts I'm going to pull out of it and try to provide more value to their customer as well as us. And that's what keeps people coming back to us is we spend the time to handle a good beef and take care of it. Because a lot of these beef, are pushing $4 or $5 grand right now.
Oh, man.
We killed some yesterday that were over 1,100 pounds on the rail. You start putting $4 a pound on that, that's real money.
Holy smokes. What was the live weight on the...
Oh, I didn't know, 1,800, 1,900. Ooh. They're big. They're full size.
Were they finished?
Oh, yeah, and then some.
Can I get too much finish on one?
Depends on what you like. If you want a prime beef, I'm going to cut 200 pounds of fat off that beef and throw it away. There's a tipping point between prime and choice where you overfinish, and it's not overfinished, it's prime, but right. There's so much fat in that the meat turns to fat. And so I shoot for an upper 2/3 choice, the stuff I finish. the stuff I buy from customers to sell to customers. I want a choice beef upper, third, 2/3 of choice is as good as anybody's had. And that's good enough. Prime beef, very seldom do people get it. And it's expensive and there's a ton of waste on it.
Okay. This is a carcass question, I guess, customer question, but can you take that excess fat and reuse it to maybe flavor up some lean hamburger, or what do you usually do there?
We do. I try not to mix customers' meat. If, I'll sell some of the beef tallow. I'll keep it. We'll mix it into wild game, for example. We make a lot of wild game sausage. A lot of that beef fat will go into that. Unless somebody requests, most people get what they bring me back. Unless they request, hey, I got a lean burger cow. I want 10% fat in it. I'll put it in it. Is what I don't want somebody coming saying, you put rancid fat in my good cow when it was an old cancer-eyed hamburger cow and I ruined it.
Yeah.
I try to limit that a little bit, but if somebody comes in and says, hey, that cow's really lean, I want some fat in it, we'll put it in it.
You can come up with the fat to put in there.
Oh, yeah. I got 400 pounds probably sitting in my freezer right now.
Yeah. Is it worth it to burger older cows, older animals?
Oh, yeah. The real challenge is everybody wants lean hamburger and choice steaks, and that's two different cows. So they bring me a high choice, say a Wagyu cross steer, that's the best beef they've ever had. They're mad because there's too much fat on the burger.
Yeah.
And so they're like, I want you to take all that fat out. Well, that fat's intermuscular. I can't take it out.
Yeah.
Cut a Wagyu cross steer today, and it felt like a pig almost because the meat was so greasy, but it was super good quality. But the burger is so fat, it's almost like sausage.
Yeah.
There's only so much of that intermuscular fat you can get out before you just throw it all away.
Right.
We do a lot of fresh beef sausage with that because of the high fat content. People like that a lot. If you want lean burger, it takes a pretty crappy cow not to make burger.
And again, if you're a burger in the whole cow, you're getting all the good cuts in there too. So you got lots of good flavor, lots of good texture.
Yep. I mean, we do a lot of cows that are just burger cows, bulls. Yeah, we do a lot of burger.
Very good. All right. What else do you want to add? Again, when a customer is coming to you or leaving from you, what helps that relationship work well? The processing thing, let me just add this before I do that. For those people that run a birth to plate type enterprise, it's fantastic to me how much risk there is. The very narrow in-between stage with the processor. So to me, the relationship with the processor is, and the success of the processor is pretty important to the success of any direct consumer business. I talk to people all the time that work with processors that are having trouble. They're either not getting the processor what the processor needs or vice versa. It can be a big part of managing a direct consumer business. So give us thoughts you've got on that.
Yeah, those people are betting the whole ranch on the guy cutting the beef. I mean, that's basically what it amounts to. It's a big risk. Be clear what your expectations are. If you're going to sell it at a local food deal, farmer's market, selling cuts, that's one thing versus selling a whole beef to somebody. So you got to know your customer, know how that beef's going to be sold. Do people want 1 pound burger, 2 pound burgers? Do they want?
Yeah. There's
infinite variables on cutting a beef. I can cut a beef any way you want, however you want, but I need to know that. And the guy getting the beef on the other end has got to, be on the same page. If you're selling a generic, out of a cooler beef versus selling it to a restaurant, for example, that wants a 16-ounce ribeye versus a 4-ounce filet mignon, you start portion control. There's a ton of variables there that every customer is different.
Cool.
We've just started into the retail stuff. We're marking stuff for retail sale for other customers. Every cut has a weight on it. You start into labels. There's just a ton of stuff there that every package of hamburger is a big deal.
Yeah. And let's talk about packaging for just a minute, because there are quite a few options there, packaging and labeling, right? That's all stuff that adds on to what you guys are doing.
That's a whole nother layer. Yes.
What are some of our big challenges there? What are ways we can be better there even?
It comes down to money and equipment. I could put $250,000 into this plant tomorrow in equipment if I had the money and, make it look like it come from Walmart. But we weigh out 1 pound of hamburger at a time and we wrap 1 pound. We're slow, but we see every piece of meat and it's done right. We have a sealback machine that speeds things up, makes it look a lot better. It's hard to sell somebody a piece of meat if it's wrapped in white paper and they can't see the meat.
Even if that's how all of us are accustomed to eating it, right?
Yeah, I got guys that are mad because I seal back their beef, and I'm like, well, and we've kind of weaned off of paper. We had to start with paper just because of space when we started, but we bought better equipment and more equipment and tried to speed things up a little bit and make it more professional.
Yeah, love it. All right, Aaron, that's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I imagine we're going to talk again because we have a couple of different topics I want to cover with you, but I appreciate you joining me this afternoon. It has been a lot of fun watching you get this thing built and turn it into something that really works. It's a pretty impressive deal. I know you've discovered through this that the meat packing business is about the easiest business to be in, right? This is just like printing money and being lazy and hanging around, right?
Yeah, JBS don't have any competition anyway, so.
Very good. There are little plants because of these grants that are kind of springing up all over the place. If somebody was thinking about building their own processing facility, what would you say?
Don't do it.
Why is that?
Oh, government regulation, to be honest with you. We fight the government most days and most weeks, and the whole system is geared towards making JBS and Cargill and the bigger plants work because they're way more efficient. We're fighting an uphill battle for sure. I won't say don't do it, but you better go in both eyes open, knowing what you're getting into. It's a legitimate deal, and one customer could come sink the whole ship or a specter or whatever. There's 100 different things that can sink this deal, and I was too dumb to quit when we started, but now the reality of it set in. We put a lot of money in. We're banking on us hauling them out. It's a real deal. I definitely lost a lot of sleep over the deal. I'll never lose money on a cow again, too. There's a lot of guys wondering if they're going to make money on their calves this fall, and so I know my costs coming in, going out. I used to put on the resume, I understood the cattle business from start to finish. I was probably BS. Now I do.
You got a little better understanding now, huh?
Yeah, until you've cut ribeyes all day and ground hamburger all day, you don't understand the cow business.
I love it. Very good. Well, like I say, I'm super proud of what you and Dana have gotten built down there. It's a pretty good deal. So again, Aaron Reese, Provident Meats, where can we find you if we want more information?
ProvidentMeat.com is the easiest way to look us up. Yeah, that's it.
And you're in Fillmore, Utah.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, again, thanks for joining me. We will talk again.
Okay. Thanks.
You bet. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchonomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.